Gracias, Frida, por estar con nosotros comentándonos hoy todo tu trabajo, las investigaciones que has llevado a cabo. El mundo atraviesa una fuerte debacle económica, como veníamos comentando. La industria militar, al menos en los Estados Unidos, atraviesa por la misma situación.
No, Miguel. The weapons business does not stimulate the economy. Here in the United States, where most of the weapons are manufactured, the industry employs relatively few workers. There was a study done a number of years ago by the National Commission for Economic Conversion and Disarmament, and it found that for every $1 billion invested in the weapons industry, 21,505 jobs were created. That same study found that the same money, if it were invested in healthcare, for example, would create twice as many jobs, would create 40,429 jobs. And at the same time as it created those jobs, it would meet the critical need for affordable preventative health care here in this country. $1 billion invested in education creates 35,268 jobs, while also educating a new generation of Americans. That money invested in the housing sector creates 30,967 well-paid construction jobs, while addressing the housing crisis in the United States. In transportation, $1 billion would create 25,806 jobs, while building safe roads and a comprehensive public transportation system that would be designed for a future of limited gas and oil reserves. So at a time when budgets are tight and the needs are great, we can see that investment in healthcare and education and transportation and housing creates more jobs and meets critical needs, while investment in the weapons industry just builds weapons.
Frida, ¿estos negocios benefician a la población de los países donde estas empresas militares están radicadas?
Well, the weapons industry is preparing for smaller defense budgets in the future, but the immediate prospects in the short term look very good. As most industries are laying off workers and watching their stock values diminish, the weapons industry continues to report record profits for each quarter and is also getting large orders for new weapons, both from the U.S. Armed Services and from foreign governments. Just a few examples of recent proposed weapons sales are as follows. There's $7 billion for a THAAD missile defense system. That's for the United Arab Emirates, and that sale would benefit Lockheed Martin. A $2.5 billion sale of 30 Apache helicopters to Taiwan would benefit Boeing, which manufactures the Apache helicopter. $225 million worth of Black Hawk helicopters to Brazil. Those Black Hawk helicopters are manufactured by Sikorsky. $15.2 billion in joint strike fighters to Israel, and that money goes to Lockheed Martin. $375 million in cluster weapons to India benefits Textron. So not all of these sales will go through, and some countries may take a pass, may opt not to buy these weapons because of more pressing economic needs. But even if a quarter of all of the recent proposed U.S. weapon sales go through, it will result in a banner year for the weapons industry.
Ahorita en este ambiente de campaña electoral que viven en los Estados Unidos, ni Obama ni John McCain, a pesar de los problemas económicos que vive la población y que vive el país, han planteado la reducción del gasto militar. ¿Qué opina?
Sure. Well, Senator Barack Obama is trying to counter the perception that Democrats are soft on defense, that they are doves instead of hawks, and especially because he's not a military veteran and is running against someone with a military record as a war hero and a former prisoner of war. Obama has to demonstrate his strength and his knowledge about military issues. Senator Obama has said that he will increase military spending in order to repair the damage done by 7 years of war fighting. and they talk about resetting the military. For his part, Senator John McCain has repeatedly talked about the need to spend smarter on defense. In debates with Senator Obama, he's focused on his record as a maverick who has cut waste and pork from the defense budget. While this is a good thing to hear on the campaign trail, it's important to remember that as a candidate before the 2000 election, George W. Bush also promised to spend smarter on defense and to skip a generation in weapons procurement and cut waste from the defense budget. And then once he became President of the United States, he wasn't able to do that. The United States spends more on the military between the Defense Department's budgets and the costs of the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, spends more on the military than the rest of the world combined. But we find that just spending more than everybody else doesn't make us safer or stronger or more secure. In times of growing economic uncertainty and in the face of militarized policies that have cost $800 billion so far, and that's the cost of the global war on terror to date, and could have long-term economic consequences of $5 trillion, according to economists Joe Stiglitz and Linda Bilmes. There are many adjustments to the U.S. military budget that need to be made. The Arms and Security Initiative is part of a consortium that's developed a unified security budget. And in this report, we call for some $61 billion in cuts to military programs over the next year, including about $25 billion just by reducing U.S. nuclear arsenals, confining Washington's national defense program to research rather than deployment, and to halting programs that could contribute to an arms race in space. These funds, we assert, could be reallocated to prevention, to diplomacy, to programs that recognize that true national security requires more than just being the biggest military in the world. And this is the kind of leadership that we need in tough economic times.
Frida, ¿qué esperanzas tiene el planeta de una reducción en la compraventa de las armas?
Sure. Well, the Arms Trade Treaty is a good instrument. It's a good first step. It says no arms for atrocities, no arms for genocide or violence against humanity, no arms for violations of human rights or humanitarian law, and calls for responsible transfer of weapons and respect for sustainable development and peaceful coexistence. And in 2006, in October of 2006, 153 states voted in favor of a resolution calling for the establishment of this treaty. And while 153 states voted in favor of that, 24 abstained. But the United States, which is the world's largest supplier of small arms, and in fact the world's largest supplier of any kind of arms, was the only country that opposed that resolution. Other major arms manufacturing nations like Russia and China, India and Pakistan opposed the treaty and abstained. So the work on that treaty begins, but it begins, at least for now, without the contributions of these major states. And these states, the arms supplying nations, need to be continued. They need to continue to be invited into the process, and also shamed for not participating. And here in the United States, one way of doing that is to note over and over again that nothing in the Arms Trade Treaty would be a departure from the letter of laws that are already on the books in the United States.
Bueno, gracias Frida, te deseamos el mayor de los éxitos en tu trabajo, continúa con tu labor que es muy importante para todo el planeta.
Thank you to the viewers of Asamblea Viva.